Escaping the Fold by Vincent Merkel. The Retreat and the Sailing Machine. We felt safe as we had put a great deal of distance between us and the Malaks. The exhaustion from the arduous night began to set in, along with the pangs of hunger. Alexandra walked briskly in front of me, and we exchanged no words for what seemed like an eternity. She was frazzled, and her limbs were dirty with muck and blood, as were mine, though we had suffered only minor scrapes and bruises. "Alexandra," I questioned, "don't you think you should slow down a bit? You are tired and need to regain your strength. Let's rest for a minute. I have some venison jerky. Let's eat and rest." She kept walking without saying a word to me. I talked to her a number of times and pleaded with her. I feared that she might fall. Her gait appeared uneven, and the smallest obstacles on the forest floor became increasingly more difficult to overcome. Still, she would not speak to me. If there is one thing in this world that I have never learned to tolerate from my friends, family, and loved ones, it is the silent treatment, something that at that moment I was sure I was getting from Alexandra. I thought that I knew why she was upset. Since my arrival on the island, I had been nothing but trouble for the woman. I blew her cover, even though she had saved me. I let the Malak warrior get away, and now they would soon be hunting for us. The only things that stayed the Malaks from sending out search parties immediately was the natives' superstition of the spirits of the forest, Alexandra's thylacines, and the quadruped's mysterious queen. Still, Babula had given the Malaks orders that they would fulfill before chasing us through the forest. I yelled to get Alexandra to respond to me. "Alexandra! I have been nothing but trouble for you. I know that I have caused this. My heart aches for you. My only thought is for you. I feel..." As I spoke, she took a step forward and stubbed her toe on a rock and tripped. Even though her spent body flailed in a downward motion, she did not fall to the ground. She stopped with her back to me and began to vocalize a language that I was uncertain the origin thereof, but it was plain to understand her frustration. She threw her hands up in supplication to a god that she believed had stranded her on the island. Alexandra yelled at the sky,
"Flargin blog, blamik fraggin marger fargen, gammon snitch, bligge bloggen garber mugger, flargin gammy shoe."
She stopped a moment, and I moved closer to see her face. Tears were streaming, and had been, probably for the entire hike, as the dirt and blood that had speckled her face was washed clean where the two rivers flowed from her eyes. She turned her head to the sky again and taunted the powers that be.
"You heard me. A gammy shoe, a gammy shoe, a gammy shoe,"
she pleaded.
"I want my mommy and I want my daddy,"
she cried out loud and without reservation. For now she was again a lost little girl who had witnessed more misery and loneliness than any child is mentally equipped to handle, but that would soon pass. I caught her as she fell to her knees, too tired to fight gravity. I wept with her because she was my rock. She is the strongest person with the best character possessed by any individual I have ever met, and it broke my heart and tested my faith to see her in despair. I pulled her close to me and embraced her tightly and begged forgiveness for bringing her so much travail.
"It's not you. And none of this is your fault, Thomas.
She spoke quietly as she tried to catch her breath.
You have given me strength. I would have gone mad had you not come to this God-forsaken place, and I can't lose you. It is just too much for me to bear. I don't know what to do. We have nowhere to run.
She pointed to a granite escarpment.
We are here. The Theo Doro is on the other side of the rocks. I haven't been here since the day that I last saw my parents.
It is very difficult to say how long I had been on Teleonisi, but Alexandra had been stranded there since her 11th birthday. She had never been exposed to rough and salty language, as her parents are mild-mannered people and never swore or cursed, at least not in front of her. I asked what she was saying when she yelled at the sky and clouds. "What language were you speaking?" I asked. She said,
What do you mean? Those are the words I heard you yelling every time you have been in a bad predicament.
I realized that she was still an impressionable young woman and pure in her mind and heart. The brutality of combat was a necessity of survival, but the words she overheard me use left an impression on her young mind that it was acceptable to blame an unknown force that might be working for our protection if things didn't immediately work to our benefit. "I said all of those things?" I asked.
Yes. What do they mean?
Alexandra coyly turned the question back to me. I looked at her for a moment while choking back the urge to laugh at her undecipherable mumblings and answered, "I don't know, but maybe it is better if neither one of us use that language ever again. If God is good and loves us, we have to work with Him. He is God and knows better than us, but we cannot blame what we do not know anymore. We need a loving God and do not want to turn Him away because our hearts have become hardened. Okay?" I offered a handshake to seal the deal, and she took my offer, shook my hand, and her lovely face sported the smile of a renewed spirit.
Okay.
She emphatically agreed. Alexandra pointed me to a fresh spring. I fetched water in an old container that was in a hut that her father had built years before. We bathed ourselves and ate enough dried fruits and jerked venison to rejuvenate our spirits and bodies. I told Alexandra about a story I had read a long time ago. It was regarding an epic battle written by Homer that took place in Greece thousands of years before. As it turns out, the mighty Achilles and his cohorts would send messengers out into the battlefields to gather intelligence, and upon their return, the kings, commanders, and those who awaited reports would never allow the messengers to deliver their findings with empty bellies. A messenger was always fed before being allowed to deliver news, and those receiving the news would eat with them. A full belly was an antidote to the hard-hitting blow of grim circumstances. A sated man was more apt to look at the brighter side of battle and not give in to despair. So we ate and then climbed the granite wall that protected the wreckage of the Theo Doro. I looked up at the shipwreck. The formerly white fiberglass hull was grayed and had endured some cracking from years in the elements. It sat about 12 feet above the sea level, neatly perched on a rocky outcropping. A wide hole in the fiberglass hull surrounded the stone that had caused the gaping gash. Running aground thrashed the keel that could provide no stability unless it was repaired. To make matters worse, barely enough materials had been gathered and placed about the deck to patch the wounded ship. Reinforcing the structure and sealing the shell would pose some challenges. Climbing onto the deck, we found that the mast was still solid and proud, but the main boom was cracked. I was dismayed because I knew that fixing the hull and getting it into the water was no small task. I also feared that even if we had the time to do it, the weakened vessel would be a slow and easy target for Linnea. I examined the controls in the helm and throughout the boat. My findings were not promising. Rust and rot had taken its toll over much of the structure. I was feeling quite sleepy as Alexandra fingered an instrument situated above the helm. She flicked the little multi-cupped ornament and casually asked,
"What will it take to get this boat floating and in the water again, Thomas?"
My tired mind gazed at the object that she fiddled with. She poked the spinning mechanism. The rotating gizmo hypnotized me. "Do you know what that is?" I asked her.
"Yes,"
she replied.
"it is an anemometer. It measures how fast the wind is blowing. How long will it take to fix the ship?"
I did not have the heart to tell Alexandra that it would take the better part of a year with our meager resources to make the Theo Doro seaworthy again. "Alexandra, I must sleep for a few hours. Are we safe here?" She frowned at me.
"Yes, my puppies are guarding the trail on the other side of the granite wall and will tell me if anyone approaches us."
She called out to her thylacines in the language of the frogs, and moments later her animal guardians echoed her chirping in the distance.
"We are safe for now. You still haven't answered me, Thomas. How long to fix the boat?"
I walked to the shade under the hull of the Theo Doro and laid my head on an old weathered life preserver. "I will think on it and tell you what I conclude when we wake up. Get some sleep, then we eat, and then I will talk about fixing this boat." She looked at me in disbelief.
"Then we eat?"
she asked.
"Are you serious? You need to sleep and eat before you can tell me what you think? This doesn't look good."
I answered her, "Dear Alexandra, I need some time to clear my head and think through a solution to our challenges. We will find a way to make it work. Now I must sleep." I wearily blinked my eyes and thought about the instrument that Alexandra fidgeted with. The screws that had held it to the roof of the helm had rusted away, and she picked it up and played with it just outside of the shady sand where I lay. The little cupped airfoils threw glints of reflected light as she spun it around its axis. I drifted off into the world of dreams. I found myself in my uncle's house, a little ranch abode in the plains of Kansas. The dream was so real to me because I had lived there for some time in my youth. I was a problem child, a rebel without a cause or clue, and at times I was more trouble than my loving mother and father could handle. They sent me to live with my father's older brother, a hardened veteran of 2 wars and many battles, and a fighter pilot for the world's greatest air force. My parents supposed that it was my uncle's hard nature that kept me from causing him trouble, but I was awed that he was truly an artist of his craft, flight. An aeronautical engineer, he owned 2 airplanes and a quarter-mile grass landing strip in his backyard. He likened flying to dancing, and that is what he did better than anyone else I ever saw. He taught me countless flying maneuvers and told me he would teach me more when I was old enough. He could fly his airplane inverted or on its side for as long as he wanted if the engine had fuel to turn the adjustable pitch propeller. He designed and hand-built his primary love, the only all-metal biplane known to the world. It was an aerobatic anomaly, swift and graceful, but with maneuverability second to none. My uncle built the machine, and together we soared through the skies of Kansas whenever our numerous chores permitted. He taught me the many finer points of carpentry and craftsmanship as he would put me to work renovating his house, and then he would school me on why airplanes fly and how to fly them. It became a part of my life. I would go in the summer months to lend my uncle a hand, and he would pay me for my labor by taking me up into the sky. He could make his airship dance over the clouds to my delight. Over the years, he relinquished the controls of his airplanes to me, and I knew what it meant to be free. As my uncle aged, my life had taken me onto other adventures, and he died before I could wish him a farewell. That day, under the hull of the Theo Doro, I still dreamed of my fabulous uncle. We stood at the open door of his airplane hangar and looked at a bright orange windsock. He quizzed me. "So, tell me, Tommy, is today a good day to fly?" He held onto my upper arm with his calloused hand and squeezed my bicep. "Well," I answered, "the sun is going down, and it has dropped 12 degrees. The cool temperature should give us a good short run on the takeoff. Headwinds appear to be steady at about 8 to 12 knots from the south. No crosswinds yet, but there is a cumulus nimbus cloud coming our way. If we fly now, we could easily get off an hour of loops and a few point rolls, or we can just sail straight and level and try to break 200 miles per hour. My heart soared at the thought that I was standing with my dear old uncle again, and in my dream I was unaware that I was living in a figment of my mind's desire to be home and safe with my most loved one. I looked at my aged uncle and told him, "Uncle Edwin, thank you for being here for me." The old aviator pointed to the sky without answering me, then grabbed my arm again. He pulled me close to him and whispered in my ear, all the while maintaining his finger pointed at the sky. "I don't want to alarm you, Tommy, but it is coming up behind us as we speak," he said. I turned to look over my shoulder as the air turned crisp and the clouds suddenly roiled overhead. A shadow of a beast was creeping up on me as my uncle kept his gaze on the sky. The thing that was gaining on me was a ghostly apparition, a smoke-like creature with black wings. It encompassed me and touched one of its ethereal fingers to my breast. The cold feather of smoke penetrated my chest cavity and touched my heart, and I felt my heart stop its rhythmic pulses. I bolted upright and awoke next to the sleeping Alexandra. Sweat poured from my pores. I gasped for air and looked around. I saw Alexandra's anemometer clutched in her sleeping hand, and right then I knew how to escape the island. I looked at Alexandra for a long moment. She was nestled beside me. It was the closest she had ever been to me, and I fought the urge to wake her and tell her my plan. She would think I was crazy. I was sure of it. I found an old rusty toolbox that had a few wrenches and screwdrivers in it and climbed onto the deck of the sea craft. I dismantled aluminum rails that were used as guides for the automated sail controls on the boom and mast. I took every piece of hardware and fastener that I could salvage and made a pile of aluminum scrap to be repurposed for our escape. The main cabin had a collapsible awning that was supported by aluminum tubing. I added it to my stores along with steel multi-filament rigging and a few small pulleys. Alexandra awoke and called up to me as I climbed down from the mast with a handful of long metal slats.
What are you doing? Why are you taking the boat apart?
She asked. We don't have enough time to fix the boat, I replied. And even if we did, we would have to make sure that Babula could not get to us. The only way to do that is to trap him or kill him. I saw drawings on the walls in your home that are instructions on how to trap Linnea, but we don't have time or all of the materials for that either. Plus, I don't know how successful the artist who drew the plans to trap Linnea was in his efforts. We are not going to sail in the water where he can get us. We're going to sail the sky far above his nasty head. I moved quickly. Grab the materials I have salvaged and let's go send a signal to the Kalans and let them know we are on our way to Deuteronomy. Alexandra was incredulous to my assertions that somehow we would sail the sky. I explained my plans to her as we made our way back up the mountain to the shield that I had stashed far from the scene of carnage from the last night's battle with the deranged and deformed Malak warriors. You told me that you had saved all of the sails from the Theo Doro out of the elements in hopes that you would sail the ship again? I queried Alexandra as we hastily made our way up the mountain.
Yes, but I don't understand how the sails can help us without a boat,
she frankly stated. I stopped and pulled my pen and a piece of paper from my scabbard. I began to write what my uncle had taught me and showed it to Alexandra along with a drawing. Look! I excitedly wrote out the formulas the best I could, trying to remember an art that I had never fully learned. The highest point on this island is above your sanctuary. I estimate that it is over 1,200 feet above sea level. That gizmo you were playing with, the anemometer, here it is, it gave me an idea. You see, you weigh about 140 pounds. She interrupted me to remind me of the rudeness of speaking about a woman's weight.
I remember my mother telling my father that a woman's weight is no concern to a man if he's going.
I stopped her. Listen, Alexandra, this is important. You weigh about 140 pounds. If the wind is blowing at about 17 miles an hour and you have a wing that spans about 18 feet made from this aluminum, and the sail material from your father's boat, you should get lift. She looked at me, her head tilted slightly to the side. Her hands were on her hips.
I should get lift. What?
She was puzzled by my explanation. Don't you see? I continued with my dissertation. The cliff is always windy. Partly it is due to a wind shear that is caused by convective activity. Cold air forces the hot air up, but mostly it's breezy there because of the altitude. I can bet that there is enough wind to get a glider to fly to Deuteronomy. At your weight, if the wind blows 17 miles an hour, as I am sure the air current is even faster than that as a general rule, for every mile an hour over that limit, you can fly forward 1 mile an hour. If the wind blows at 30 miles an hour, you will be with your parents 2 hours after taking flight. We have to time everything just right.
You are telling me that you want me to jump off the cliff with something that you are going to make with this junk and sails?
Alexandra was in total disbelief. Alexandra! I laughed as I grabbed her by the cheeks. I am telling you, that we are going to fly from the cliff with gliders that I will make from this junk, and we will be far from Lernea's reach. I will teach you how to fly it. It's just like flying a kite. I became sober for a moment as I realized all that could go wrong with my plan. It will be easier than the things that you have had to endure these last 12 years, Alexandra. It is our best chance at escape. Please trust me. Building things is my specialty. It is the only thing I have ever been able to do right in my entire life. Alexandra gave me a nervous nod.
If you build as good as you fight, then I will do it. I will jump from the cliff.
I shook my head. No, Alexandra, you will not jump from the cliff. You will fly.